Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Rotman, and this will be my vlog channel for my Comm Media class, Comm 45, Section 1. This week we are reading two books, Reading Pop Culture and The Rhetorical Act. This week we had to read Chapter 2, and Chapter 2 was based off of criticism and how we should read rhetoric analytically, and to do this they created a lexicon, or if you don't know what that means, it's a set of terms that are essential to descriptive analysis. There are 7 terms that they created, and the first one is purpose, the conclusion argued or the thesis, and the response desired by the rhetor, so whoever's using the rhetoric analysis. Some purposes are instrumental. They seek a change in belief or attitude, or even an overt action from the audience. Some purposes are consummatory. They seek appreciation, contemplation, or conferring honor or blame. The second one is audience, the receivers of a rhetorical act, so whoever is reading it, watching it, etc. This includes an immediate audience, a target audience, a role created by the rhetor for the audience, or specialized audiences, VIPs, with a social or political power to effect change. In this initial descriptive phase of criticism, the aim should be to identify the audience or audiences that the rhetorical act seems to seek. That is, the aim should be to identify the people or sorts of people most likely to be influenced. So basically, everyone who reads it or watches it, they are being persuaded or influenced a certain way. The third one is persona, the roles adopted by the persuader in making the argument, for example, a teacher, preacher, reporter, prophet, or even a mediator. The fourth one is tone, so the rhetor's attitude toward the subject. It could either be detached, emotional, satirical, and so forth. There's a whole bunch to choose from, or different attitudes a rhetor can have. And toward the audience, so their attitude towards the subject and toward the audience. It could be personal, impersonal, authoritative, egalitarian, supplicant, and so on. The fifth one is evidence. The evidence is the different kinds of support material for the argument or claims made in the rhetorical act. So what are they using to support their claims? And the sixth one is structure, the way the materials are organized to gain attention, develop a case, and provide emphasis as well. Structure can be obvious or apparent, like the organizational pattern of the speech or essay, or it can also be more subtle, such as the underlying organizational principle that unifies the rhetorical act and drives it forward. So it can either be stated fully, or it's hiding within the rhetorical act. And then the final one is strategies, the dictation of all of the above, including language, appeals, and argument, to shape the materials to overcome the challenges that rhetor faces, so in the rhetorical context. So that was from the Rhetorical Act, Thinking, Speaking, and Writing Critically, the 5th edition, and now we'll jump into Reading Pop Culture. In Reading Pop Culture, it's filled with many different essays on different topics, and this week we had essays from Barber, Letts, Barths, Ho, Postrel, and Bryson, and they all had different essays that related to the same overall idea. So the first one was Overselling Capitalism with Consumerism, and in Benjamin Barber's writing, he focuses on consumer economy and capitalism. He was just basically mentioning how within today's world, most consumers are not typically purchasing their needs, but their wants. So they're not buying what they need in life to live, but they're buying what they want and what they desire. And he just tries to mention how before new things came out like the iPhone, individuals were buying things that they actually needed to be in a sustainable environment. So that could be food, stuff like that helps them survive. And he makes a comparison how today people are just buying stuff that they like and that they see in today's world. He makes a quote that says, "We still work hard, but only so that we can pay and play." And this is really an interesting quote because it just goes to solidify the idea that people these days are just working and they're getting money just so they can go and spend it on fun and things that are extra, things that aren't actually needed. Society will be doomed as time passes on because consumers are getting worse and worse each day. People are in debt, they are charging on credit cards, and they're spending money that they don't actually have. The younger generation, like my generation, is destroyed by valuing childish things, like, for example, buying the newest iPhone or the newest technology when you could have an old one that works just as fine. The second one is, with these words I can sell you anything. This is by Lutz. He focuses greatly on the world of advertising. So throughout his piece, he is very passionate about it, and he expresses the way advertisers trick consumers into buying their products with the help of what he likes to call weasel words. A weasel word is essentially a word that appears to be making a claim for a product when in fact the word is making no claim at all. For example, the word help. He explains that help is a weasel word that is mostly commonly used to trick people into buying products. For example, when you're buying a medicine and it says to help relieve cold symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end or stop the cold symptoms. So it's tricking people into thinking that, oh, if I take this, it'll stop it completely. But actually, it won't. It's just making you think that, so you'll buy the product. People are blinded by weasel words and they're missing what the advertisement is really saying. There are many weasel words that advertisers use, and it is our job to fully comprehend what we are reading and what we are purchasing. And he also mentions different weasel words like virtually spotless, new and improved, acts fast, works like anything else, and like magic. Just like you and I, all of those words probably gain our attention, and it's probably the product that we're going to go to and look at and read first. He's just making sure that we are realizing what we are buying, and it's crucial when reading what the label says, because what it can actually do for you rather than what the label might say it can do for you is completely different. It's always best to look beyond the fancy label and the catchy phrase to read into what is actually you're purchasing. The third one is Toys, written by Roland Barthes. And his piece was to compel readers that as children are developing at a young age, they are also developing into creators. This is why it is important that children are given toys and things to be exposed to. By doing so, they are being forced to use their minds and to think critically and start to understand the different ways of the world. For example, Barthes he jumps right into French toys. French toys are extremely important in France, as the Frenchman sees a child as another self. He then mentions how all the toys one commonly sees are essentially a microcosm of the adult world. So they're reduced copies of human objects. Today, kids are getting bored and now have access to their phones, video games, etc., and it totally disrupts the cycle of how our society will teach our kids how to react to real-world situations. The next one is called Craving the Other, and it's by Solil Ho. I personally found this one super interesting because she starts off by stating how Vietnamese food makes her feel uncomfortable. She then describes how she wanted the plain, straightforward food that she'd seen on TV, like bagel bites and Pop-Tarts. And I ate those growing up as a kid, so I just had that connection that way. It was about how she felt connected to her family and disconnected with the rest of society. So in all honesty, she felt disgusted for the way Americans acted towards her and associating her with the Vietnamese food. Just because she was Vietnamese, they're like, oh, you must love Vietnamese food, and she didn't like how they were categorizing her with that. It was just also interesting to see how much food can actually have an impact on someone's life, and for her, it was a pretty big part of hers, and for who she was. In her writing, she explains how the tradition is lost within food. In her culture, food has meant something to her, and others just take it for granted. So, like, nowadays, people, whenever they see something trendy, they take a picture of it, and they post it, and food is the number one thing for that. The next passage that I read was In Praise of Chain Stores by Virginia Prestrel, and she begins with a statement that says that America is very monotonous and boring. It's the same everywhere you go. It's interesting that she brings up the point that in almost every city, you'll start to see the same things. So the same shopping malls, the same stores, same restaurants. And even though every city is not focused on the name of the stores exactly, but the memories that are created within them. Their main focus is to make sure that they're built well enough so families can incorporate family time and make unforgettable memories. Post-Trail also mentions that the most of the common stores are brought up because they know that it's what people like and what they're going to go and see. There's nothing wrong with having something that the public enjoys, even though it's already somewhere else. And the last one is called The Hard Shell: Advertising in America. And this is written by Bill Bryson. He kind of just focuses on advertising in America as a whole, and he's saying how advertising in America is a lot of dedication and hard work. It's not something that you can just put out there and people are going to see it and recognize it. It's about true research and strategy to have good advertising with an actual outcome. He personally has numerous techniques that he uses to advertise, like making better and cheaper products, having a good slogan, having maybe a giveaway of some kind, and also verbal hypnosis. Of course, there are more out there, but these are the ones that he typically uses and thinks that will do the best for you in your company. Bryson uses things like mass marketing, which is getting the word out significantly by using every resource possible, and he also thinks that having a good slogan helps the advertisement of a product. For Bryson, it was very important that he made it clear that in order to have a successful advertisement for anything, one really went and took the time to fully dedicate themselves and look into every step along the way to ensure that every moment was being used effectively. And then he just explains how the last thing he wants is anyone to work super hard on something that they're trying to advertise and for it to be a waste of time. And all things must be considered when advertising in America.